Okay. These guys. Okay. All right, so can you tell me a little bit about childhood memories growing up? Stuff about your parents, sisters, all that.
Sure. So yeah, I I was born in a suburb of Chicago called Evergreen Park, and my dad worked for Armour Foods, which was a meat packing company. You know, they sell ham and hot dogs and those types of things. And so my dad used to get transferred around a lot with his job. So our family tended to move like every 5 or 6 years. So my mom was a stay-at-home mom, so she
Which was normal in those days.
which was very normal, and she had gone to college actually. She got probably what's called an associate's degree.
Was it unusual for a woman to do that?
It might have been, yeah. She went to a 2-year college. It was called St. Mary's of the Springs, and which was a Catholic women's college. I think it's called Ohio Dominican now, but she took like secretarial courses, and my dad never went to college because his family was very poor, and he had to work even while he was in grade school and high school to help support his family.
Wow.
So
was it like before child labor laws or something?
Well, he didn't work full time. He had like after school jobs. He worked at a grocery store and like sweep and stock the shelves. And he was a paper boy, and he had a lot of odd jobs he did to help support the family. And then as soon as he got out of high school, then he started working full time.
Gotcha.
So he I think he took some business courses and things like that, but he got a job at Armour Foods, which was where my mom's dad and brother worked. They both worked there too, and that's how my parents met. Through Armour Foods. My grandpa had been transferred from Omaha to Columbus, Ohio, and I think they sent my dad out to his house to do something. I don't know, to bring some papers out or show them something. And that's the first time he saw my mom. But my dad was 7 years older than her. My mom was only like 17. So he said he had his eye on her, but he had to wait for her to grow up.
Right. Okay.
So, and he actually became really good friends with my mom's older brother, Frank. They actually became best friends.
Okay.
So we used to see more of my mom once they became buddies. And that's how he got to know her.
Okay.
So he eventually, I think he had like a clerk job, but eventually he got moved into an accountant job. He wasn't a CPA, but he was good at accounting. So he became like an accounting supervisor, that kind of thing. And then kind of worked his way up a little bit. But anyway, so when my parents got married, they were living in Columbus, Ohio. So my 2 older sisters were born there, Eileen and Kathy. And then my dad got transferred to Pittsburgh, and Maureen was born there. And then my dad got transferred to Chicago, which was like the home office, and that's where I was born. But
that was in LaGrange, the suburb.
Actually, no, we lived in a suburb called Oak Lawn. And a lot of my mom's family lived in that area. She had cousins and an aunt and uncle that lived in that area, so they were familiar with that. So when I was about 8 or 10 months old or something, my dad got transferred back to Pittsburgh, and he was offered a job as the controller of the Pittsburgh office. So that was a promotion for him, so they took that job. And that's where my earliest childhood memories are of Pittsburgh, from infancy to about age 7. So Pittsburgh was a really nice experience because the street we lived on had all kinds of kids. It was always somebody to play with for everybody. So I had a lot of little friends, and it was really fun. And you had the beauty of the 4 seasons. So we had a hill in our backyard, so we would go sledding in the winter time, and then in the summertime we'd catch lightning bugs, and we play outside all the time. So I had a lot of little friends, and my sisters had friends, so that was nice. And then when I was getting close to 7, my dad got transferred to, and I don't remember this. Apparently we moved back to Chicago because apparently Dad told my sisters, there was something going on where he said, if I don't take this move to Chicago, I don't know if I'll have a job, in the future.
Job security thing.
Yeah. And, we all loved it there because we all had our little friends, and it was a really nice setup. But he's like, what do you guys think? And, I have no memory of this, but they told me this, and my sister's like, well, then we better go. So
It's a tough choice to give up fun for job security.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what they did, and we moved back to Chicago. And then when they moved back, they knew more about Chicagoland by then because they'd lived there before. So they decided they wanted to live in a suburb that had a girls' Catholic school, because my sisters were all teenagers by then.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going into 2nd grade. so they and they also wanted a suburb that had a train that went to downtown that was convenient for commuting for my dad. So that's why they picked LaGrange, because it fit the bill.
Mm-hmm.
But they had to wait till their house in Pittsburgh sold. So they just they decided to rent a house in LaGrange until the house sold, and then they could actually buy a house. So we lived in a little 2-bedroom rental house, and
6 people.
with 6 people, because my dad was very thrifty. He was a child of the Depression, so we figured it was almost like staying at a house, like an in-suite or something. You had a kitchen, you had 2 bedrooms. So my parents had 1 bedroom, and 3 of us girls slept in the other bedroom. Maureen slept in the dining room on a studio couch.
Oh, wow. And just 1 bathroom, I imagine?
And had just 1 bathroom.
Yeah.
But we only lived there for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And the grade school that we went to for that side of town was called St. Cletus. So I was in 2nd grade and Maureen was in 8th grade. And Kathy and Eileen went to the Catholic high school, which was called Nazareth Academy. It was just an all-girls Catholic school. So they did find a house about 3 months in to us living in this rental house, and it was on a really good street. It was a fixer-upper, and it was a prestigious street, which I didn't know that much about, but they decided, it was in their budget and all that stuff.
That was a thrifty guy. It seemed to be a good opportunity for him.
Yeah. So we bought that house, and again, my little 2nd grade mind, they took us to see our new house, and our house in Pittsburgh was just a normal basic house that was not that old,
Mm-hmm.
and it was pretty ordinary. So when we went to the new house, I remember it was so run down, it was so shabby. It had originally been painted yellow, but it was gray because it was so dirty and all that. And the flooring looked awful. So I remember thinking to myself, oh, we must be poor now.
Wow.
And I never told anybody that. I told my mom that years later. She thought that was hysterical.
But it makes sense, if you didn't know how fixer-uppers work.
Yeah.
You just think you're downgrading or something.
Yeah. So it was kind of a labor of love. The house had 3 or 4 layers of wallpaper, and so my dad put everybody to work, scraping wallpaper, and I guess he hired an architect to do a few renovations. And one of the things I remember is my sisters, again, they were so much older, they were painting the walls and all this stuff, and I was only in 2nd grade, and I'm like, I want to paint too. So my dad said, you are going to paint your closet. So he gave me a roller thing, and he gave me a brief rundown on how to do it, and he said I did a good job. So I was really proud of myself.
You helped out the team.
Yeah,
just like
exactly.
The big kids.
Yeah, exactly. So that was nice. And then the school that was in the boundaries for the Catholic, parish district was called St. Francis. we moved into the house about 3 months after we bought it because we were doing the fixer-upper stuff. So I had about like maybe half a semester to go, and my mom didn't want to uproot me, pull me out in the middle of the year. So she did a smart thing. She got me she got me put into a Brownie troupe for St. Francis grade school because she thought that would help me the next year, that I would know some of the kids already. So that's what we did. I started going to a Brownie troupe at St. Francis after school. And then when I started third grade next year, I knew like 2 or 3 girls in my class. So
smart.
I thought it was smart of her.
Yeah.
She had a lot of experience by then of moving her kids.
Yeah, I guess
and knew how it
older
was.
sisters. And,
Yeah. So that was nice. And so for me, moving was hard because, I was painfully shy, super shy. And it was hard for me to make friends. Plus it was hard to leave Pittsburgh because I had all these little buddies, but you kind of force yourself to,
You don't
have
a choice.
you don't have a choice. And most of the time, like when I was in first grade, my sisters were all at the same school because it was like a 1st through 12. They didn't have kindergarten, but they had 1st through 12th grade. So we all went to the same school. 2nd grade was just Maureen and I, but she was an 8th grader and she had no use for me.
Yeah.
So I was kind of on my own for that. And then when I moved to St. Francis, they were all in high school, so I was by myself. But I met another little girl from our neighborhood too, so we became friends. And so it worked out. And so that was my story about, going from there. And then we lived in that house for 6 years. And, it was funny because once in a while I would talk to people and they'd say, well, where do you live? And I'm like, I live on Blackstone. Oh, you're rich. And I'm like, this does not compute. So it was
funny. It was a prestigious street. There was
a lot
of nice homes.
There were 2 streets. One was called Sunset and one was called Blackstone, and those were like the fancy streets. And so when people would say that, they're like, I have no idea why they're saying that.
Yeah. And the house did eventually get more fixed up.
Yes, it was a show place our minds. It wasn't like an enormous house. I forget what the square footage was. It was let's see, I think it had 4 bedrooms. 1, 2. It had, it was a 4-bedroom house. And my parents had the back porch enclosed and made into a breakfast room, and they remodeled the bathrooms and stuff like that. So it was nice. But it was built in like 1920 or 1922, somewhere in that range. So it had like wainscoting, and crown moldings and stuff like that. So it was a nice little house.
Very cool.
And I grew to really love that type of old homes because it was a very stately looking street because they had these big elm trees that made it looked like a cathedral, like an archway down the street, and all the houses were distinctive, all different. No like cookie cutter looks, and
not like
just
Phoenix.
they just had a lot of character and charm, and I always have liked that type of architecture since then.
Mm-hmm.
So that was that, and so I think that my probably the biggest influences for me growing up were all the moves, to different parts of the country.
Mm-hmm.
I think going to Catholic school had a big influence on me, and just my family, my sisters and my parents, and having older sisters, it was really a neat thing for me because you would ask me about what music I like, and I knew a lot of the music of the 60s because I had older sisters, and I was exposed to their stuff.
Mm-hmm. And again, the age difference, Eileen was the oldest.
Mm-hmm.
Eileen is almost 11 years older.
Yeah.
And then Kathy is, how does it break down?
Yeah. So when I was born, Maureen was 6, Kathy was 8.5, and Eileen was 10.5.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So they're real close in age. They're all like 2.5 years apart, and then there's a 6-year gap, and then there's me.
Right, yeah.
So, and my mom actually had 2 miscarriages after me.
Yeah.
She had one when I was 3, and she had one when I was 5. But I guess I was meant to be the last one.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was really lucky in the way, and I've probably said this before, my sisters, they had a lot more sibling rivalry because they were so close in age, whereas I was just the baby sister and I wasn't really a threat to anybody.
There's no competition there.
Yeah. The only, I guess, a little bit had to do with Maureen because she was used to being the baby princess.
Ooh.
And when I came along, I dethroned her.
That's right, yeah.
So she used to like tease me a lot and taunt me and stuff.
Sure.
And
As siblings do.
as siblings do. And I remember one time she was, she would tease me and I'd go, Mom, I'm more, and then my mom would come, you leave that child alone, and I kind of got used to that routine. So there was one time she wasn't even in the room and I started saying, oh, please stop. Oh, you're hurting me. And my mom goes, you get your hands off that child. She came storming into the room and I was like, she's like, you're on your own from now on.
Oh, like cried wolf and
Yeah.
got busted.
Yeah. So that kind of helped the transition, and then Maureen and I started getting along after that. And Maureen was and she'll admit that she was kind of immature for her age. She played with dolls later than the typical kid. I mean, she wasn't like really bad. But
Everyone blooms at different ages.
Yeah.
She was a little on the later
she was
side.
a little later bloomer. So she and I used to play together a lot, even though she was 6 years old. But we'd play with dolls and we'd play games together and we'd watch shows and movies and things. We'd do more together.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Kathy and Eileen, I didn't do as much with them.
When you say movies, was that always in theaters, right?
Oh, well, on TV.
Okay.
We would go to movies together once in a while too in the theater. But
They would still show movies on TV in those days.
Yes, they
didn't
did.
have very many channels, but they would still have
yeah, they would show old movies and stuff sometimes. So yeah, and my relationship with Kathy was more. Kathy was she was my role model. I always thought she was perfect. She was so pretty, she was so smart, and I would always watch her and try to imitate her because she just always seemed to know the right thing to do. And I would follow her around and watch her, and I would try to emulate her. And she was she was very popular, and she was a good student. And then Eileen, Eileen had her, Eileen had spinal meningitis when she was a baby. She was born perfectly healthy, but I guess there was some germ in the hospital, and there were like 6 babies that got spinal meningitis, or I can't remember the exact, something like that.
Outbreak, yeah.
And she's the only one that lived.
Wow.
So she struggled. She had neurological issues, and so that was a big influence on our family too. Eileen, having special needs, and so there was sometimes some drama with that because she was very jealous of Kathy, and Kathy, always acted like it didn't bother her, but it did. So, and my mom would kind of. She favored Eileen a lot because she was the one that needed her the most. And they didn't have all the resources that they do now. Yeah. So my parents' only choice back then was to either institutionalize her or mainstream her, I guess they call, just raise her. And my mom, and they recommended that she be institutionalized. My mom said, no, we're gonna take care of her. So they did. They, got her special help when they could, remedial reading and things like that. And they just tried to make her life as normal as possible. And they gave her responsibilities and jobs. But she still struggled, and she'd have, kids would tease her at school and things like that. And sometimes she'd cry if, Kathy was invited to some party or something, and she'd be getting ready to go, and Eileen might throw a tantrum, and and it would kind of put a damper on things, and that would happen from time to time. And sometimes my mom would say, Eileen is normal, you should treat her just like everybody else. And then sometimes she'd say, you shouldn't treat her that way, she's not normal. And then she'd say, strangers are kinder to her than her own sisters, and that kind of stuff. And again, she did the best she could, and we did the best we could.
Yeah.
And sometimes
there's no perfect playbook for that situation.
Yeah, and sometimes I have friends over when they first meet me, they come over, and almost without fail they say to me, what's wrong with your sister? and I didn't know how to explain it because I was a lot younger, and I'd be like, well, she had spinal, they didn't know what spinal meningitis was, so it was a little awkward, and it was, yeah, so there was definitely some influence of that. I think probably it gave all of us maybe more empathy because we knew that she struggled, so when there is somebody that struggles and has special needs, we're probably more kinder to them, or more try to be more empathetic because we know how hard it was for her, and how hard she struggled and how much she's accomplished and overcome. So yeah, so that was a big thing.
Yeah.
So I might take a break so I can
Yeah.
change out the dryer.
Sure, yeah. Let's pause here. Let me make sure this thing's still going. Yeah, still going. You're still in frame. That's good. Okay.